You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 105 of Teach Better Talk. I'm Ray Hewart, and as always, I'm with my English-speaking friend, Jeff Gargis. Hey, Jeff.
What?
Well, you speak English, so we went with English.
I do. I am not bilingual.
Can I ask you,
like you?
Do you speak any other languages?
I speak a very, 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 very little bit of Spanish. And
Could you give us a word?
No bueno.
There we go. That's really a good job.
It's very
You're
small.
kind of no
I
bueno,
think,
just so we know.
I think the best is "Donde están mis cervezas?"
Which is...
Where are my beers?
Okay, this is a great way to start Teach Better Talk.
No, so I actually, Spanish is it's crazy because we talked about a lot in this episode. And I was thinking the whole time too, like I used to really like it. Like in high school, I really liked it. And I just didn't. I never took any more courses on it when I went into college or anything like that. And just so I only know a little bit here and there. But I enjoyed it. I've always wanted to. You talked about it in this episode about you yourself wanting to learn more. I would love to do that too. I think you and I need to challenge each other to learn Spanish.
Okay, I will seriously not lie to you. I almost enroll in a Spanish class at our local community college almost every semester, and I haven't pulled the trigger, and I'm so like I really think that I give myself some credit. I really do a lot. I try and stay busy. I know that when I choose to enroll myself in that course, that I'm going to really need to free up some time to practice and immerse myself in it. And I want it so bad, it's just not the right time. So I would love to do that with you.
How about you and I? Let's find like there's podcasts that teach you Spanish, or like some like Rosetta Stone or something, and then we'll just go back and forth. And in between and prior to and after podcast recordings, we'll practice.
Okay, you're joking, but I'm like sitting up in my chair.
I'm actually not joking at all. Like, okay, this is recorded. Our listeners are listening. So, like, they're looking like they're going, okay, it's episode 105. So maybe like episode 175, they should be able to do in Spanish.
I love this idea.
It's probably Jeff, a little lofty. No, let's do that. Let's do it.
I started learning Hebrew when I was young. And I think it stuck with me better because I learned it growing up. And then when I got into a different language, I took Spanish through high school. My brain, I am not good with languages, and I want to be. I need a really committed teacher that can kind of like tell me to overcome my fears of like already like deciding I'm not going to be good at a language. And like, I just want to do it, Jeff. This is a goal of mine.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a therapy session right now.
This is a really weird way to start this podcast episode, but I think so. The reason we're talking about this obviously is because, our guests, we talked a lot about, bilingual teachers, working with ELL students and this, and Barbara is such a expert in this that we really got into it and really dive deep into it. And one of the cool things I think, Ray, is that we talked a lot about like the next steps, and here we are plotting out some of our own next steps. But we started talking about along with the bilingual and ELL, the trauma informed teaching, and just a lot of stuff that she does some really cool stuff with it. And Ray, honestly, I'm going to give you some props here. You asked some really great follow-up questions that really allowed us to showcase Barbara's expertise in these things. And I was thinking to myself, and she sort of touched on it, but I was hoping maybe you can expand on some things like teachers who are listening to this episode, getting excited about this and wanting to expand their knowledge on this and their expertise on it and to grow with this. Some of the next steps, some of the places that we can go for just learning and growing around these areas. Do you got anything for us?
Absolutely. I mean, I myself am struggling this year. I've worked in so many different roles in different populations I've been able to teach. And the reality is that we as educators not only need to grow in our instructional practices, but also grow in the way that we're informed on the students that we have in our classrooms. Mm-hmm. So whether that be, attending a conference with like the National Association of Bilingual Education, where we're like at a conference and maybe taking away those tactical next steps to reach our bilingual learners, or attending a workshop for trauma-informed practices, or really anything in between. I mean, I think finding conferences, whether it be at the state or national level, that we can kind of hone in on those strategies would be valuable. And I mean, Jeff, you and I go to conferences seemingly all the time. And I know we've mentioned IDEA in our podcast before, but that's a perfect example of a very large conference. So you don't know, it's the Illinois Digital Educators Alliance, IDEA, used to be known as ICE, where they bring together not only educators that like to talk about tech, but educators that really are experts in a variety of topics that we can use to help our students. There's so many tech tools out there. There's so many supports that we can do as educators to try and reach our learners in different ways. And I really think that we as educators commit well to our own personal growth in the field in terms of lesson design, which obviously we do a lot of work with, but this other avenue of needing to build authentic relationships and really hone in on the needs of our students is something I really love that we focus on in this episode. So whether you are, doing a national conference like a AMLE, like a middle level conference, or doing a conference at a state, wide organization like IDEA, or going to the Teach Better conference in November. I mean, anywhere right now, it is a hot topic to talk about trauma-informed schools and bilingual education and everything in between. So I think there's a lot of outlets. The other one I mentioned, not to ramble, but I really think that like local community colleges have classes on these topics. And you as the educator can find ways to be a part of these classes, even if it's not for a grade or towards a certificate. Find times to kind of live in these spaces so we can just be more informed on where our students are, in their upbringing. So I'm kind of on a tangent. I'm super passionate about this topic. I don't know a lot about it, and I want to know more.
I love it. I want to touch on something because you just happened to mention our friends over at IDEA. It's kind of fun. I'm actually going to that conference, IdeaCon, in February. You don't know it, but you're coming with me.
I love this conference. I want to go. I'm glad.
Well, it's in Illinois. I know you're gonna go. But IdeaCon's in Schaumburg, Illinois. How far is that from you?
Okay, Jeff. Fun fact: I was born in Schaumburg. It is 20 minutes from where I grew up, but it's about 2.5 hours from where I live now.
Awesome. Well, that's still not that bad, though. So that's February 24th through 27th, I believe, 2020. Well, I can't believe it's 2020. We're already talking about going to conference 2020. It's not that far away. So yeah, that's so we know the amazing folks over there. So I'm going to give them a quick plug of IdeaCon. It's over at if you go to ideaillinois.org, you can get all that information over there. So tell them Jeff and Ray send you. But super awesome. Yeah, Ray, thanks for diving into that. I think that's really cool. I think Barbara gives a lot of great first steps and ideas for people to just sort of get in the right mindset and think through these things. And like I said, some really cool follow-up questions that really allowed her to really showcase where she's at. So Barbara Mascareno she's a science teacher, a writer, and she's the owner of Spanish for Kiddos educational services. So if you go to Spanish with the number 4 kiddos.com, it's a really, really cool site that she goes into a little bit more detail. I'll let her tell it better than I do. But she works with supporting teachers and bilingual parents that want to teach Spanish for their kids. She's really passionate about bringing that the ELL learners into content areas. A big one is science. That's really her background. She talks about that. But just a really cool episode about how to work with the bilingual parents and students and teachers and those ELL students, and bring them into not just the language but also other subject matters. I was super excited about this one, and she didn't disappoint. And I'm excited to get right into it, so I'm going to shut up. Any last words for you before we get them into the episode?
No, I really wish I could say something right now in Spanish about how much I love this episode, but that will come in episode 172.
Is that what 72 now? I thought it was 175. Is it 172 now?
Yeah, 175, guys. Give me a few more. 175.
All right. I'm going to cut this out. I don't want to commit to that. All right, let's stop here. Let's get into episode 105 with Barbara Mascareno.
Hey everyone, it's Ray. We're going to get right back to the episode, but I want to share something special for my Illinois teachers that are listening to Teach Better Talk. I love professional development, and there is so much going on across the state. One of my favorite avenues to find professional development in the state is through IDEA, which is the Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. For those that don't know, it's a non-for-profit organization dedicated to leadership and education through technology. One of my favorite things they do is the ISTE certification. This is a digital credential that recognizes educators who understand how to use ed tech for learning in a meaningful and transformative way. Illinois Digital Educator Alliance has been selected by ISTE to be an authorized provider for this certification. If you want to find out more, make sure you head over to ideaillinois.org and you can find out all the details. And by the way, if you go do this, make sure you tweet out at Jeff and I, because we would love to hear that you started your ISTE certification journey. All right, let's get back to the episode.
All right, we are here and we are talking with Barbara Mascareno. And Barbara, it's super exciting to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and chatting with us, having some fun with us, and sharing your story with us. How are you feeling right now?
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for inviting me to your podcast. I am very glad to be here as your guest. I'm doing just perfect. How about you guys?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing awesome, Barbara. I'm so excited. The more and more I learned about you, I was just so thrilled that you were joining us. So I want to make sure that our listeners get to know a lot about you too, because you've really had some great experiences in education and done a ton in your career so far. So would you mind kind of answering kind of what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate the question. Basically, I have a science background. Then I went into teaching for Title I schools. And mostly I worked with ELL students or English language learners. So my focus was to teach science in the content area with English language learners.
That's so funny that we're talking today, because this has been a huge topic in my school that I currently work in, is supporting our ELL students better. And so I think that I'm going to have a ton of questions for you during this podcast recording.
That's fine. That's wonderful.
So, Barbara, one of the things that we talk about on this podcast a lot is failure. I'm a lot of people, if they've been around me for a while, they'll probably hear me talk about the fact that I've been fortunate enough to fail a lot. So I feel like it's taught me to be who I am today. So, with a lot of experiences that you had, and we just know all the time educators just always have great stories with this. So can you share a story with us about a time that you've had a failure? Can you kind of take us there with you? What happened? How did it make you feel? How did you overcome it? And then what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, that was an interesting question, because failure, it just comes in so many shapes and forms in the classroom, and especially as a teacher, and especially when you see your students fail as well. I guess I can recall one particular instance where I had a student that was very quiet, very withdrawn. And when you work in a Title I school, you see a lot of kids coming with different backgrounds. This child had a very rough background, very tough time adapting, changing. And one of the things that kept on motivating is for him to just try, to be consistent, to try things, whether it was a simple task, or something that was just sharing something with someone. And even though he didn't do it at first, but it was until the moment that he realized that he could do it in a different group of kids, that it opened him up to allow him to realize that, yes, he can do it. And that was just an eye-opener for me, because I felt like a failure to him or to the rest of my students, that I wasn't be able to, okay, what other strategy can I use? What am I teaching wrong? Where's my teaching manual helping me with all this here? So it just my mindset was just changed from that moment on. And his aspect too, because he realized that he could do things as well.
And so it's just that try, just continue trying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pushing through. And that's such a powerful message and lesson that we can transfer to our students, all of the students, but especially those that come from, the more difficult backgrounds and deal with a lot of additional challenges, but just the continue to try, and that I'm going to be here with you, and we're going to try this together and stuff. I love that that's the story you chose, and that was your mindset there. So let's flip it now. Let's talk about a time that you've had a successful moment in your life, and this can be something big or something small. But tell us what happened. Why was it a success for you, and then what did you take away from that?
Let's see. I think most of the success is just seeing my kids succeed in the classroom, whether it was something really small or it was something big. I remember, I think, one particular project that we had done that it took us in science. Of course, those projects can take, weeks in high school or even in middle school where I taught. So when those projects, 2-3 weeks go on, and you're seeing the progress from the kids, and they're actually turning things in, they're actually being motivated to present in front of the class or to work in group, and that really lifts me up, because it just lets me know that, okay, they really want to work together and they really want to just push through.
Barbara, I don't mean to push, but you wrote a little bit in here as we were brainstorming kind of what our podcast was going to be about. You wrote a little bit about experiences with resistant students. And the reason I brought that up is because I think that is such a challenging topic to talk about, but it's something that's so valuable for our listeners and for teachers across the country to really be able to have authentic experiences on. So would you mind sharing a little bit about what you wrote about working with a resistant student?
Sure. So in that case was a student that was withdrawn. So had emotional, I wouldn't say trauma, but there was moments in where he was not performing to grade level, and he wasn't performing, of course, in previous grades. So it just did not, every teacher he would push back. Until, of course, there was that consistency from my part, and the ability to have him in a group of kids that would also motivate him. It's not just only me, but it's actually the classroom environment, the cultural environment that you allow, your other kids to participate in, that allowed him to actually come out of the shell, so to speak, and then to participate, with other kids, or to just talk. And that was a big part of it, just to talk with other kids about what he needed to do, or to collaborate with a small project, or to write up a few things. And I think that helped him in the end. Of course, that didn't happen, overnight, but, that was through a course of, 5-6 months until, you see him, flourish in the classroom.
Sure. I think it can be challenging, and maybe I'm just kind of reflecting on my own experiences I've had the last few weeks meeting my students. It can be really challenging as we're getting to know our students to know that it's really a long-term game, right? I mean, we meet our students, and some students come across shy immediately. Some students are coming from broken homes and have trauma in their life. And as educators, we really are fixers, right? We want to kind of jump in and bond with our students and just be whoever they need us to be. But I appreciate you sharing this story, because you're right that long-term game, sometimes it takes 5 months or longer to build that relationship. But this idea of building a culture, not just the teacher-student relationship, but a full classroom culture, to ensure that student can feel safe and open to really be a part of that family that you're building. I appreciate you sharing that. I know that wasn't initially what you answered, but it's really valuable for our listeners to have that reminder as well.
Yeah, I think it's all in between there in the whole classroom, the success and the failure, success and failure is just all in one big umbrella. I have just so many situations in my head. That was one of them that came to mind. But yeah, and it was actually the consistency. This was actually, if I want to go back a little bit, it was an inclusion classroom. So I had special education kids along with the regular kids. So along with my special education teacher, we would co-taught the class. And it wasn't until that moment that was co-taught, that we were able to bring the kid out of the shell, so to speak. And yes, like you mentioned, it's the culture, it's the environment that you allow that child to be himself or herself.
And it's important not to dwell on this, but it's so important as a teacher that some days you go home and you're like, gosh, I don't know if I did enough that day, or I don't know if I reached my students the way I wanted to that day. And to be honest, teaching's a long game as well, that you never really know the impact you have until years later, sometimes months later. And so the ability to kind of come home and know that tomorrow's another day to make a connection and persevere through those challenging times to reach those students. I really love that mission. I so appreciate that that's something that you've dedicated yourself to throughout your teaching career.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So obviously, you have to have a lot that fuels your fire to be able to work with a variety of students that you are able to work with seemingly every day. So do you mind sharing, what's keeping you excited about education and kind of everything that you're able to do in the classroom?
Oh, goodness. Like I said, when I taught science, and especially with ELL, working with ELL students, I mean, just the process of creating and designing, because I wish I could say that there was a lot of resources for teacher out there, especially for bilingual teachers, but unfortunately there aren't that many. So a lot of it I did on my own. So because I knew how to reach my kids, or what worked for them, what did not work. So a lot of was the process of creating, designing, and going through my lesson plans. And okay, if that didn't work, I have to try something else. So, but a lot of it came from hands-on experience, and a lot of collaboration in the classroom. That's something that I was amazed a lot of them do. And it's not just, chit-chatting, but, putting expectations and putting guidelines so that can be successful. But the long projects that they did was something that was a lot of planning and organization for my part. But the rewards was just so amazing later on, just to see them succeed in that.
So do you mind, can I ask you, because this is like something I'm so passionate about. I am so jealous. This is a true confession here, right, Jeff? This is like real talk with Ray right now. I am so jealous of those educators out there that have the ability and the talent and the skill and the commitment to learn multiple languages. Like I actually think that it is sad to know that I don't have the ability right now. I really need to learn to speak Spanish and connect with the students that have that background. What's like the first step, right? Like, so I'm a teacher in Central Illinois. To be honest with you, I speak English and Hebrew, which is not helpful for the climate that I work in. And I have students that speak a variety of languages. Actually, in my building, Spanish is a very major language where I work. Would you mind sharing, like, what do you suggest for a teacher that really is passionate about wanting to get started in kind of blending that gap?
Well, I guess it all starts with, depends on what your school district is asking you to do. In my particular school district, we had a lot of textbooks that were bilinguals, English and Spanish. So whatever I had, of course, the kids had. So a lot of things came from that point of view, but it wasn't the strict structure. Here's chapter 1, and it's in English and Spanish, and so you'll be able to read it in Spanish. So it was none like that, but it was the ability to say, okay, let's go ahead and start with what is the educational objective of, say, this unit or this standard, and then from there on, break it down so that they are able to learn it bits by bits, as opposed to read one whole chapter and I'll answer questions 1 through 10 tomorrow.
Sure.
Because that does not work at all.
Absolutely. And that's blending in those best practices of wanting to, start with where we're trying to master, right? Start with that standard, start with that objective, start with that target, and then break it down for, like we would do for any student, of course. How can we better incorporate language more purposefully in there? Do you have any suggestions for us?
Especially when it comes to those core subjects like science and social studies, where they're very heavily with the context and the reading and the literature and the science literacy. I found that a lot of kids prefer, I can't say fill in the blanks, but a lot of the graphic organizers I would make, or certain charts, or certain different anchor charts that we use in the classroom, different things that I would point out so that they could see every single day. And then from there, start building up little by little. So it's not, here's 20 vocabulary terms. You need to learn these, in the next few days, and there's going to be a quiz. It's more like, how can I teach you this in context so that you can recall this better and actually retain it better? Did it work for a lot of kids? Sometimes it did. It actually helped them also when they saw visual aids like videos or short clips. And if those were closed caption, or if those were along with maybe a small task that they would do at the same time, that would help them a lot too.
Barbara, you are totally, that was like perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. You just gave about 25 different like small things that as a listener and for myself, I can like go do specifically tomorrow in my first hour class. I love that.
Great.
So in terms of advice, I got one more follow-up for you. I want to make sure that as we're looking at kind of all teachers, right? These are teachers that teach across the world, whether they're brand new into a building or fresh into the career. What is the one piece of advice that our teachers need to really support our students?
I can tell you that for that first year teacher, or that teacher that is about to embark on teaching, is just be consistent and flexible. Flexibility in teaching is huge. You might think that it's a 9-to-5 job, and it's probably not. But, and you might think that you have the perfect lesson, but unfortunately things happen, technology happens, fire alarm goes off, and God knows what else. You improvise, or you teach it something different. Be flexible. Or, kids have their days. So, you have to be flexible and consistent with what you're doing every single day. And some days, of course, are harder than others.
Jeff, I'm sorry I've completely monopolized this conversation. I'm just so enthralled in Barbara's recommendations. You can ask a question if you want, but if you just want to take the rest of the episode off, that's fine too.
I'm just sitting here just soaking it in. I'm loving this. This is, so actually I'm going to take us off track too, Ray, if that's okay.
Sure.
Not allowed. Sorry. We have a script following.
Barbara, I want to talk to you. If you wouldn't mind, can you share with us a little bit about Spanish for Kiddos?
Oh, sure.
Your website and your services that you provide. Just tell us all about it. What is on there? Who's it for? Who should go check it out? Like, what can we find over there?
Absolutely. So Spanish for Kiddos Educational Services is an educational supplemental services for teachers and parents that want to teach Spanish at home or in the classroom. And Spanish for Kiddos actually started as a journey because I was teaching my daughter Spanish. And it began, of course, as a journey of creating and designing specific resources for teachers that, again, just are not there for the English-Spanish teacher that has to go through, all these resources out there, and it's just so confusing. Or for the dual immersion teacher that is teaching, in Spanish and English. And what I do is, from my background in science and from my background in teaching, I research thoroughly Common Core and NGSS, a specific standard. So everything that you see on there are research-based and evidence-based resources. So it's not just a lesson plan, or it's not just a coloring sheet. It's just something you actually can use in the classroom and see results.
Very cool. And that's over at Spanish 4. That's the number 4. Spanish 4 Kiddos, KIDDOS.com. We'll, of course, have the link for that over in the show notes. So I wanted to make sure we get a shout out for that because it's a really great resource. So thanks for expanding on that a little bit. All right. So now let's have a little bit of fun. So the next 6 questions, what we're going to do is, your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. Are you ready to go?
Sure.
That's a common answer. That's good. All right. What is one ed tech tool you could not live without?
Oh my goodness, Google Classroom. It saved my life.
Give us a book that you're reading right now.
I'm reading a Spanish version of Eva Luna by Isabel Allende.
Who do we need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today?
Well, you guys, of course, and WIDA Consortium. They have a great resource of everything WIDA and ELL and SCORE, so they're great to follow. Judy Haynes, she's a great ELL teacher and educator. She has great resources. And at ESL Library, they're awesome to follow, great resources too.
Great. And what's a good YouTube channel or website for educators?
The Education Podcast Network, they have a lot of great resources, podcasts of teachers and educators.
And give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine that every teacher should get into.
I got my desk cleared every single night, and it was hard, but it was so helpful the next day to come in every morning and see that I had my desk cleared and ready to go. So I really recommend that to any teacher.
Get your desk cleared every day. Wow, that is challenging, but that can be really powerful to come into a clear desk every day. So I'm interested. I want to actually go offshoot, Ray. I need everyone listening to try this and then to tweet out your clear, clean desk at the end of your day, hashtag Teach Better Talk and hashtag Teach Better. Share that with us so that we can all see how awesome that is for you. So super cool. I love that one.
I don't know how you commit to that, Barbara. That is, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I could totally do that. But I won't lie, guys. It's Monday night. We're recording Teach Better Talk podcast. I kind of had a day. My desk is absolutely not cleared.
Barbara, I don't know if you know or not, but in Teach Better Talk language, Ray just committed to this as well. So Ray, we are going to be expecting your pictures shared out on Twitter and Instagram showing us your clear desk.
Oh, man.
No pressure there, Ray.
All right, last question. With best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh my gosh, get that sub lesson plan or a sub binder for your substitute teacher and get that the first day or the first week of school because it's going to save your life. Emergencies happen. I had a flat tire one day and in the middle of the highway, or I had my kid sick, last minute with a high fever and I had to rearrange for a substitute. So I would say get that sub binder ASAP.
Oh my gosh. I definitely agree with that one. That one I have done. Okay. Don't be upset. Barbara, I have learned so much. I'm like over here taking notes. I just want to do this better. And I love that you're able to share some really valuable tactical takeaways that I can go back to my room and use tomorrow to really continue to support all of the students in my classroom. Would you mind for our listeners kind of sharing out where they can find you on Twitter, Instagram, your website, YouTube channel, all those things? That way we can continue to learn from your expertise.
Absolutely. Well, of course, you can always read my blog at SpanishForKiddos.com/blog. You can always find me on Twitter. Twitter handle is Spanish for Kiddos. That's Spanish, the number 4, and kiddos. I'm on Instagram, Facebook at Spanish for Kiddos, Pinterest also on Spanish for Kiddos. Just about anywhere at Spanish for Kiddos.
Make that nice and easy for us to know there.
Yeah,
to follow there. So you can find all the links and all the resources we talked about over at teachbetter.com, especially those important links for connecting with Barbara and getting to all of her social media and website and YouTube and everything like that. So that'll be all over in the show notes at teachbetter.com. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and review, we'd really, really appreciate that as well. And let's continue to take this one step further. Just think of 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and share this podcast with them. We really appreciate that. Barbara, this was fantastic. I love what we dove into, and we joke with Ray, but I love where she took us with the follow-up questions, and we really got into something cool here and really special. I think this is such a valuable episode for listeners. So really, really appreciate your time and your expertise and your passion and just having some fun with us and coming on. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.